What is up? So in this video, what we're going to do is break down all of the pieces of a successful evergreen webinar funnel. So at this point at the agency, we have worked with multiple seven-figure evergreen webinar funnels. And these things are fantastic tools when you can get them working, but getting them working can be a lot of work. And I don't think until I really got to work inside of businesses that had built seven-figure evergreen webinar funnels, I really understood all of the components and the pieces that make these types of funnels work. And so what I want to do in this video is I'm going to take you over to my computer and I'm going to map out for you all of the different pieces behind the best funnels that we've worked with. Because one thing I can tell you, and the difference between a lot of the funnels that I've seen that don't convert and a lot of the funnels that I see do convert, is what people are doing after people opt in and what's happening on the back end. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump over to my screen and I'm going to show you every single step of a successful converting evergreen webinar funnel. So what I did here is I mapped out all of the different steps for your webinar funnel. And I'm going to walk you through each one step by step. Most of these you already have seen, but some of them I think especially on the back end you might not have. And so let's look at every single one of these. At the very beginning, not super surprising, what you have is a landing page. So this is your webinar registration page, your landing page, where you are sending people to actually sign up for your webinar. And as you can see here, you can drive traffic from all kinds of sources. So we have successfully run webinars on YouTube, Google search, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. A lot of organic emails, a lot of organic traffic can go to these webinar funnels. So you're really not restricted to where you're driving traffic from. As long as you've got an audience, you've got their attention, and you want to move them into your webinar registration, you can do that. We have definitely seen, as a lot of these have grown, you might end up with multiple webinar registration pages. So maybe you find that one works better on YouTube than it does for Facebook. So maybe you've got some different webinar registration pages. Don't think you have to have just one, but there's going to have to be some core way people that get in. And so when people opt in, obviously you send them to a thank you page. I think one of the big things that I've seen on this thank you page that can really help a lot of people is actually optimizing what this page is. So I've seen too many companies that on the thank you page say, hey, thanks for registering, check your email or something like this. This is a great opportunity to build your authority and get people to show up. So what a lot of companies will do on this page that do really well, short videos, basically whoever the presenter is talking to the person who registered, talking about why they should show up, and then show up bonuses. So a lot of the really big companies that we've worked with that have successful webinars are giving away some type of bonus, some type of incentive to actually show up to the webinar. And you can let people know about that here on the thank you page. We've also seen that work well just on the registration page and then re-emphasizing that on the thank you page. Once somebody opts in, this is where your email sequence kicks in. And you want to make sure you have a really good email sequence to get people to show up. Oftentimes, what works best, what can really help improve the overall performance of your webinar is getting more people to actually show up to the webinar. And so you want to obviously confirm with people when they've registered, that they've got how to get in, when that time is, all of that stuff. And then the emails leading up to that are pre-framing them about what they're going to learn, why this is important, why they need to show up. And so we've seen anywhere from like 4 to 7 email sequences pre-framing people and getting them to understand why they need to show up this webinar, depending on how far out they're registering. And then you've got your attendance emails. So these are the, hey, webinar starting in an hour. Hey, the webinar starting in 10 minutes. Hey, the webinar starting right now. And really at this point, you're just trying to make sure that, again, you're getting people to actually show up. So I've got here that this is a live webinar. Maybe your webinar is live. Maybe your webinar is evergreen, but either way, there's a specific time that somebody signed up for this thing. And so this is where you just want to make sure that they actually show up for that thing. We've definitely seen conversion rates for people who show up at the time that they registered are typically better than someone who catches the replay later, because the number of people who realistically don't show up and then actually watch the webinar are much less than the people that show up. 35% to 50% of the people you want actually showing up to the webinar at the time that they registered. Now, this is one of the really big things that I've seen for companies that do really well with this is if somebody does not show up. If somebody does not show up to the webinar, you have your did not show up, you need to catch the replay sequence. Because realistically, most people, if they don't watch the webinar, they're probably not going to buy what you have to sell. So the important thing first is getting them to actually consume that. So if somebody did not show up, then you can have a sequence that goes out and sends them the replay. And that's when you are giving them the webinar replay and getting them to engage. And then that would then trigger the next sequence, which is, hey, they watched the webinar and now they need to buy. And so if someone shows up onto the live webinar, at the end of the webinar, we will push them typically to a sales page. If you're doing high ticket, we see people push people to a phone call. Usually anything above 3K at the end of the webinar, they're pushed to a phone call. Anything below 2K, 3K would be pushing it. You could send people to a sales page. So what we see here is a big email sequence to get people to buy. Again, this might be anywhere from 3 to 10 emails for someone who actually watched the webinar in order to push them into purchasing. And so you can see here also, we can like run bottom of the funnel hot retargeting ads to people who show up to the webinar and consume it and get them to go to the sales page. Here we can either, if we're driving to a high ticket, we have a phone call. If not, we put them on the sales page, but eventually they go to the order form, they buy. That is the ultimate goal. Again, one of the big things that I see for companies that do really well with these is how they treat the leads that don't buy. Because the reality is, if you've got a 35% to a 50% show up rate, and then you've got a 2 to a 5% conversion rate on your webinar, most people that sign up for the webinar are not going to buy. That's just how the numbers work out. So what you do with those leads becomes very important to your profitability. So if people don't buy, with companies that we see that do this really well, drop them into an engagement sequence where they're continually sending them content that relates back to what the core product is and what is the opportunity that they're selling that helps people solve the problem that they have. And so here it's a lot of story-based content, a lot of educational-based content where they will send people emails and then also video pages. So additional bonuses, additional trainings, drop those on a landing page, have videos. Underneath that, there's a call to action. And where that call to action always leads to is back to the sales page. And so they're sending out a bunch of content, and probably 70% of this information is educational or story-based, and then making offers and getting them back to that, back to the sales page. Again, you can have long-term retargeting here. So this is probably some of the retargeting that's easier to run inside of accounts, because depending on how many people that you have going through your funnel, if you have a big audience of a few thousand people who did not buy over a few months, you can just have long-term retargeting campaigns that are sending people to landing pages like this that have a video on it with a call to action underneath that send people back to the main offer. And so this is one of the biggest things that I have seen that help companies who do this really well, which is having a long-term sequence for people that don't buy. So that's the whole run through here. Again, the most important thing to figure out is looking at each step of the process and what are the conversion rates to each step? What's your landing page conversion rate? What's your show up rate? What is your sales purchase rate? And figuring out how you can use the different resources you have at your disposal, whether that's email marketing, whether that's the offer, whether that's adding incentives, bonuses, to get people to move to the next step. Because with a lot of these funnels, especially the biggest ones that we've worked with, there's someone back there optimizing these things to make them work better. A lot of people set these things up once and then they start running ads or they run it to some audience. And when it doesn't work the way they want it to, they kind of get upset and throw their hands up and say, webinars don't work. Webinars do work really well if you have the right offer and you set things up right and you go through the process of optimizing each one of these steps. So if your landing page is converting at 15 to 20%, you're doing pretty good. If it's below that, figure out where you can optimize your landing page. If your show up rate is 35 to 50%, great. If it's lower than that, or if it's on the lower end of that, figure out how you can get more people to your webinar. And then if your webinar, just keep improving the actual presentation itself, keep improving the follow-up sequence, and keep figuring out how to monetize that list of people and that database of people who are signing up for that topic you have. Because the more people you convert, the more higher the earnings per lead that you can get on the funnel, and the more you can grow your business using these types of funnel. So I hope you found this useful, and I hope that you got to see something new about how the money really is in the follow-up with these types of campaigns. But if you have any questions, please just feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next video.